we're going to be talking about Microsoft cloud offerings and how to manage them in that incredibly crazy mixture of cloud services and licenses that they are. Very quick disclaimer, we are not Microsoft, because I get these questions. Guys, do you provide official certifications? We are not Microsoft. We are some expert. We are people with the combined experience. Now we have a team of 4 people, so we have a combined experience of almost 100 years working with Microsoft technologies and licensing. So this is us. This is us. We're not Microsoft. This is our practical implementation experience, our what we took from our practical challenges, our battle scars. And I always say, even when after these lives, we try to explain things. But if you want to get the official point of view, how it's written officially, always refer to Microsoft product terms. There's a website. So it used to be a document until 1st of February this year. Now it's a website, which is updated quite on a regular basis, normally once a month, sometimes more often. So pay attention to that, which you can go to. And how do you find it? Just Google or use Bing. Type Microsoft product terms. It's going to be first or second link anyway. So always check everything there. I even encourage you to open it now, because online services use rights have also been joined the product terms this year. So it's all there. If you have any questions, if you want to look up something, what we're talking about today, go to the Microsoft product terms website now. So what is Azure? Azure is Microsoft cloud offering, which is designed to be everything as a service. Kind of the big promise is forget about licensing, forget about backups, forget about security, we're going to take care of everything. Did it work? Not necessarily, but it's a great thing. I actually kind of like it. I'm myself more of an AWS consumer, but I've got a few resources in Azure as well, because some things work that better for me. Lots of enterprises are in Azure, as you probably know. Government has its own Azure, at least in the UK, where I am based. So it is just IT provided as a service, but it would be too simple if it was just that, just IT provided as a service. Everything is a service, because you can bring your own licenses to Azure, and thus reduce Azure costs, thus reduce the investment that you made in your licenses. And Azure Hybrid Benefit, I'm going to talk about it today with the service SQL Server. You can use your own licenses, you can bring them to Azure and reduce the total cost of ownership of Azure solutions. You can bring more licenses, not just as your hybrid benefits. So licensability through software assurance, other licenses, other eligible products may be brought into Azure. So you get a mixture of licenses and cloud services. Subscription services. So some of the, if you know what SPLA is, and if you consume anything from a SPLA provider, or if you're CSP provider, you may already be working with a cloud solution provider, somebody. If they resell SPLA licenses, if you heard about it, you may bring SPLA licenses, some of them, eligible licenses, to Azure as well, which opens a whole world of possibilities. But also, there's a caveat, because some solutions require bring your own licenses. They require you to bring your own licenses. They may not exist purely in Azure, and we'll touch on that as well. How you build in Azure, what do you pay for? How does it work? So consumption services are like a taxi meter. You call a taxi, it's already near your doorstep. The clock is already ticking. This is how consumption works. So you procure something, you spin up a virtual machine, you consume storage. The clock is ticking, you are being billed. Unless you shut it down, unless you tell the taxi driver, like, thank you, go away. Metrics vary, so there may be. I have a slide for them, so don't concentrate on that yet. There are other licenses which are paid per user, even in Azure, very much like Office 365. If you already know how Office 365 works, so there are licenses that are paid per user per month. Services like Azure Active Directory Premium information protection, where there's a user metric, where it's license per user. That's a per user license. That's not consumption. That's not per gigabyte or megabyte or minute. And there are also marketplace solutions, so third-party solutions that you can procure from Azure. Salesforce solutions out there. Small and big companies, they provide solutions in the Azure marketplace. You purchase them in the same way through the Azure management portal. You procure those solutions, and they build in various ways, which we'll cover today. I promise you. And here are just an example, a few service metrics. So virtual machines are built per hour. Well, actually, they're built per minute. You are billed every hour, but the metering is per minute. Database services per gigabyte, storage per gigabyte. You get the idea. How do you pay for those services in Azure? So obviously, I hope you came here to also learn about financial planning, and this is the main thing that we do in some aspect, financial planning. So there's a thing you may have heard of, which was introduced with enterprise agreements when Azure was brought into enterprise agreements, which is called Azure prepayment. It used to be called Azure commitment. Now it's called Azure prepayment. I think it's just probably less contentious word. Prepayment. Commitment is a bit like, I promised Microsoft to do something. No, it's a prepayment. So please notice on this slide, because here you can see various options. Please notice on this slide that Azure user licenses are not paid through prepayment. The only thing that you pay through with the prepayment, so pay for through a prepayment, are consumption services. This is something some companies forget. So they commit to Azure and then they get billed for user licenses. This is not always. Normally, I would expect an LSP to explain it. A licensing solution provider, the company that resells your licenses. I would normally expect them to explain this, but it's not always explained, and there may be surprises. You have a budget, you've budgeted that money, you've prepaid for Azure for that money, and then suddenly you get billed on top for user licenses, which you will inevitably have. So please pay attention. This is the key point from this slide. All the slides, obviously, you can come back and rewatch. I'm not going to touch on every single detail on these slides. They're here for your future reference. How do you buy Azure? Microsoft made it so easy. You can buy it Azure through so many various channels, almost through everything except Select Plus. Can you buy it through MPSA? I don't remember. But anyway, there are all the major channels you can think of. CSP, the new world, new commerce experience, where we're all going will be. Microsoft will force us into it. Obviously, you can buy Azure through it. Through volume licensing, notably enterprise agreement. Azure is not going to go. It's not going to be removed from enterprise agreements in the foreseeable future. You can now buy it from a Microsoft salesperson, and I'll touch on that specifically. So you can buy it directly if you're big enough. And obviously, so how I can procure Azure resources, we're a boutique-sized company. I just use my company's credit card and do it directly from Microsoft, but not via a salesperson. I talk to the website. So there are some terms. We try to stay away from Microsoft lingo. But there are some terms I'd like you to remember, because they will be pronounced quite often by your resellers, your CSPs, your LSPs, your whoever you work with. What they call Microsoft partners. So when you hear a word partner, that means that is a company that resells Microsoft services or software. I call them providers because they're partners for Microsoft, they're providers for you. They may be your business partners, I don't know, but that's the reality. So CSP is in the so-called breadth motion, and I will keep explaining this further and further. So just remember that. So breadth motion equals small companies. Small in Microsoft's understandings, not necessarily small.
Small and medium. So we need to just see, it really depends on the geography, I would say, Alex. So you could find a breadth motion potentially for a organization of 1,000, 1,500 users that in a specific region or country could be considered a really big company. So it's only in the eyes of Microsoft. It's not in the eyes of the country or of the customer itself. So you need to just understand. the differentiation of where that term is coming from.
Yeah, you've captured it well. It's because in the United States, anything below 5,000 is small business.
It's
almost.
like negligible.
Yeah. So, but if you, because I keep bringing up Cyprus as an example, not a very large country, only 300,000 people living there. I guess, except for one company, CETA, the rest are breadth motion for Microsoft. But it's not the case, because in the local markets it can be a bit different. Obviously, there are enterprise accounts which are much smaller. But anyway, so enterprise agreement through volume licensing. So Microsoft salesperson is an enterprise motion. Okay, let me just quickly go to what are the sizes. So breadth motion is up to 2,400 computers, level A of enterprise agreement. I know I'm giving you maybe too many terms right now. Just remember that breadth motion is to about 2,400. And we are expecting, this is a rumor, which is not confirmed, and people refuse to confirm it or even discuss it. We expect Microsoft next year to increase the entry barrier to an enterprise agreement from 500 to 2,400, like on this slide. So that's where breadth motion is, and that's where the target market for CSP is, for CSP agreements. And if you want to watch live about agreements, if you haven't watched it yet, it's actually on the channel. It's the previous live to this one. A link to it is in the description. So there are links to all the previous and future sessions. So enterprise motion is, nobody can really tell me where it is. I keep asking because I think the reality here very quickly is, if you don't have a Microsoft account manager yet, but you are more than 2,400 seats, you'll be in that target audience. If you already have an enterprise agreement or you have an enterprise manager for your company, even if your size is 500 seats only, you are still sort of in that target audience of the breadth motion. So breadth and enterprise motion, breadth and enterprise overlap right now. This is my view. This is what people try to explain to me. How does it affect you? Expect Microsoft approaching you directly and trying to sell you Azure directly, which creates a very interesting situation when there'll be maybe the same account manager will be choosing either to sell you Azure through an enterprise agreement that you already have, or offer you slightly different, which is on the next slide, offer through the enterprise motion. How this is going to play out, we can't tell. This is new. This is just starting.
So I want to just add on to this from a financial negotiation perspective. This opens up a whole new world of, let's call it, internal competition for your business. So there's going to be the CSP that, just to clarify, a CSP can sell to any size organization. It doesn't stop at 2,400. It's just where the motion is, where Microsoft is pushing CSPs. But CSPs can sell to an organization of 100,000 or 200,000 users, or a multi-billion-dollar organization. No restriction. So what we're going to see now, and this is the opportunity for organizations, is to utilize the internal competition within Microsoft, being the CSP, the LSP, and Microsoft itself, and compete between them. So that is where your negotiation envelope is. And that's something that is a huge paradigm shift. And if you understand that and you utilize that to your benefit, regardless of your size, because you can still play around with CSPs and LSPs if you don't have a Microsoft direct contact. And that's where I call it the magic, the financial magic is going to happen.
I was wondering this morning, Daryl, you remember probably in our chat, if you can potentially create a clash between your LSP and your account manager. that would have been an interesting game to play.
It will be, and I think that's going to happen. We're going to start seeing it more and more. Definitely with this new motion, the breadth and enterprise motion that you're speaking about. That's very new.
Yeah. So we have this question, which is I'm answering on the next slide. Do we have an option to optimize license cost through CSP agreement? Sort of. So let me bring the differences to the screen, on the screen. So then again, don't try to read the entire slide right now, because you can always come back. I want to draw your attention to a few things here. So thing number one is enterprise motion, as opposed to enterprise agreement, doesn't have multi-tenancy now. So if you have a multi-tenant complex configuration, if you plan to use a multi-tenant complex configuration, enterprise agreement right now is your only choice. It may change. In regards to concessions and negotiations, so via CSP, Microsoft are very strictly saying, no, that's provider only. The practice is, it's not a secret. Everything is possible in Microsoft. This is what they say publicly, like discuss optimizations and discounts with your provider. If you're big enough and you want to use a CSP, Microsoft will be in the equation. They will be talking to you. Trust me. Volume discounts per service. This is something that's only available right now in either CSP or Enterprise Motion, and it's not available in the Enterprise Agreement. What is this? Is if you order things in large volumes, say storage, you get wholesale discounts through these channels, but you don't get that wholesale discount through the Enterprise Agreement, which may be a bad thing. So let's move on to other differences. I promised you not to spend so much time on each slide. Notice that consumption billing through prepayments is available both in Enterprise Agreement as the core feature of the Enterprise Agreement. You think Enterprise Agreement on Azure, you think I need to buy prepayments. You don't have to. So this is what we're waiting for me. Be very, very conservative with your prepayments, unless they give you a discount, which is not promised in any of the official documents. So what I'm hearing is in Europe, you get 20% discount, which is negotiated. If you do a prepayment, it's negotiated again. So it's not, if you read any training materials, any online materials, discount is not stipulated. Therefore, what does it mean? It means it's their choice to give you discount or not, and what sort of discount is going to be. For Enterprise Motion, which, as I said, is a new thing for me, I haven't seen it yet. They say there are prepayment options. I haven't seen them offered. Maybe there are. We shall see. No idea how they're going to work. And CSP is purely monthly billing, so there are no prepayment options. Then please pay attention again. I told you already. So that is in regards to consumption services. User services are just subscriptions, just annual subscriptions. User-based services. So price list currency. At the moment, Enterprise Agreement is recalculated to your local against your local price. Calculated against your local price list, and prices are fixed when you sign an Enterprise Agreement. When you commit for Azure in an Enterprise Agreement. And price protection only exists in the Enterprise Agreement, and it's an interesting price protection where in every other channel the prices follow the monthly price list. But with all fairness, it doesn't change that often. So Microsoft and somebody recently said they see Microsoft reducing costs of Azure services as opposed to increasing. So monthly price list is not probably such a bad thing. It's just a bit more difficult to plan. When you have price protection, it's easier to plan. So what Microsoft is promising, so you will be charged the least of the three. Your price list at signing, your negotiated discounts at the current price list in US dollars. So if the US dollar price goes down, you'll be billed in your local currency, but below even your negotiated levels. If the current price is gonna fall.
So Alex, I want to just, if I may just point out on the CSP price list, I think that again one of the big changes from Microsoft in general is that they have you could call it basically a global US dollar price list for CSP. So it's the same dollar price list around the world. Now, that is a huge change. You've already got used to it in the CSP, but with Azure, of course, it's a big change compared to if you've been purchasing in Select or under an EA for many, many years, because then you have a specific price list per geography, per country, local dollars. And not only that, the way that the margins, the price lists are set up has also changed dramatically. We're not going to get into depth, but for example, the CSP, it's one price list, and then it's basically list price plus whatever margin your reseller, your CSP is taking. Where with an EA, it worked completely differently. Not going to get into details, but there was a fixed ERP price, estimated retail price, and then anything between underneath that was like a discount that you received from your reseller. So you had a cap, or you had a cap. You still have on the maximum price you'd pay on the EA. Where on CSP there's no maximum price. It depends on what your CSP is providing and your ability to negotiate with your CSP. So that's a huge paradigm shift and a big difference between EAs and CSPs, regardless if it's Azure 365 or any other service.
Hi, David, by the way. So David from Sunbeast Consulting is here today. Hi. I recently gave him an interview, and he's cutting pieces and publishing on his channel from our interview together, which is nice. Yeah, thanks, William. The accents and unique way of speech makes the listening more entertaining. Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, all I can say is thank you. Thanks, Daryl, for the note about the price list. It's a huge thing. Some things that we used to use in our negotiations, we need to rethink them now.
Changing. The world's changing.
When you're discussing differences between various motions, always ask, what you're going to get in return if you switch from a motion to a motion, because even this is a screenshot, and I have to explain it because I had to explain it to Daryl today. This is a screenshot from the Azure pricing calculator. It's a tool that is public. You can always go log in, and I'll tell in a couple of slides, I'll explain why. It's a tool that is available to everybody. You can check your prices there. Some of the products may be priced differently for the same licenses depending on how you buy them. So here you can see if you buy Azure Active Directory Premium P2 through a Microsoft representative, and you have a Microsoft 365 licenses, that's going to be included. If you buy it online yourself without a Microsoft representative, you're going to be paying for it, $9 per month per user. So pay attention to these things. If somebody pulls you into a certain channel, ask them how it's going to affect your services. And if you don't trust them, if they don't give you an answer, go to the Azure pricing calculator and just check it there. You can do it yourselves. This is what we do for our customers anyway. There are actually two cost management tools available for Azure. So one is which are built in, which are provided by Microsoft. So one is Azure Pricing Calculator, obviously, and the other one, which I've just showed you, I've shown you a screenshot from, and you can just Google them. The other one is Azure Management Portal, which is your Azure Management Portal, where there is a cost management tool. There's a cost management tool in your Azure portal. Pricing calculator, I told you to log in, because when you don't log in, you see generic price. If Microsoft can recognize you and see that you belong to a certain company that already has an enterprise agreement or something else, if you're associated with the company, you're going to see your pricing. It's very important. You're going to see your pricing and your discounts and whatnot. Azure portal is actually not just a cost management thing. It's just a Azure management thing. That's where you manage your Azure. Everything is done in the Azure portal. And here we have an interesting slide on which I'll probably pause for a few minutes because what I need to explain to you is, firstly, please memorize, if you don't know yet, please memorize how Azure is structured. So you have your tenants, under which you have subscriptions, or you can have individual subscriptions. Developers can create their own subscription. Somebody can go with their credit card and create their own subscription. These subscriptions, under them, you create resource groups. And then under those resource groups, you procure resources, virtual machines, storage, and stuff like that. So this is a very simplified diagram. Why I'd like you to understand that this is a tree structure, because when we're going to be talking about resolved instances and Azure hybrid benefits, this is going to be relevant. So again, tenant, subscriptions, groups, resources. One thing that we had a discussion about today with Daryl was from this diagram, it's evident that you must control your enthusiastic users. You must keep an eye on what's going on. And let me go through a couple of more slides, and I'll come back to that. So what we suggest and why we suggest doing in that regard. So
I like to call the slide the bleeding, stopping the bleed. So we'll get back. You'll talk about why you're bleeding here. Just keep in mind, this is where you're losing money. This is an easy place to stop the bleed. So let's move on.
Yes. Yeah. So if you procure directly or through an enterprise agreement, you get licenses. Sorry, you get access directly. And then if you want to give anyone else, your partner, your provider, access to it, you give them access. CSP works the other way around. So if you're under a CSP, if your Azure is through a CSP agreement, please remember that you need to ask your CSP to give you access to the portal and to the cost management tools. They need to give you access. So by default, you don't have access. And we encourage. I can't downplay this. I can't underestimate undervalue the importance of this, because doesn't matter if you trust with your life your cloud solution provider. You need to keep control. That's what I'm trying to say. You need to control. They're not incentivized in you paying less. So Alex,
this is important, being that when you enter into a agreement or procurement deal with a specific CSP, and there are multiple areas of control that the CSP has over your account, you need to make sure that you have in writing, and not a verbal commitment, in writing, very specific terms and conditions that you as a company need to articulate very carefully and get signed off by the CSP. And one of those terms and conditions, like with any procurement, is the management of the portal, the management of your Azure spend, giving you access. How does that work? What happens if you stop using that CSP and receiving service from them? How do they move over the management and all the historical data to the provider that you choose to move to? So this is not only just, okay, let's go purchase something. This is a motion where you as a company have to think it through and have a list of terms and conditions very, very specific for the cloud.
I totally support that and agree. So there's a comment from Carl: be cautious when creating subscriptions. This is the topic, by the way, for the next. So he's saying, I found that it's possible to move subscriptions between tenants, possibly. So, but there's one thing about moving subscriptions which is very important, and it got many recently. So subscriptions via different channels are technically different solutions. So your actual virtual machines and storage, they're all the same. Technically, it's the same solution. But the e-commerce layer between, so how you procure it and how you manage it, historically, so Microsoft is trying to consolidate it. And I think 1st of October is going to be one of those days when they say, finally we've consolidated it all. Right now, it's almost impossible to move a subscription without paying from CSP to EA and vice versa, because the storefronts are different. The way the billing works is different. There's no consolidated e-commerce layer between Azure and you. So be careful with that. And then the second thing is, if you remember that slide when we were bleeding, so it's very easy to create so-called shadow IT. Shadow IT is a thing. It's a pain. People create subscriptions, buy licenses outside of the enterprise agreement, thus basically throwing money away. People create subscriptions without asking with their own money, and then they're not getting the same discounts and they come back to the accounting department, to the financial controls, and they just say, I want to claim my IT expenses. We deployed a solution here for our department that we needed, very much needed it, and this is the bill. Please kind of, we want our expenses to be reimbursed. This is it's a hole in the side of a ship. You're bleeding, you're sinking, you're treading water. So it's not a good thing. So curb enthusiasm. Firstly, have policies. What I suggest, if you want to be absolutely 100% draconian, this is what I tell to every customer of ours. You want to avoid somebody creating subscriptions because they wanted to, because it was quicker for them, easier than to go through the centralized procurement and centralized IT. Just don't reimburse expenses. Have a policy that is saying, no Azure, no cloud, no SaaS expenses will be reimbursed unless they go through the centralized channel. It may be pain, because that's what many organizations used to do with hardware assets previously. Just give someone a limit. You may buy computers, you may buy tables, chairs, and whatnot for $50,000 a quarter, and then in that sort of money you can do whatever you want. So delete, especially cloud expenses, from those budgets. Don't give them that sort of flexibility, because you'll be overpaying. It's simple as that. You'll be losing money, because it's really simple. I really hope you understand that they are not getting the same discounts. Simple as that.
And let's also not forget, Alex, that a company potentially can have multiple CSPs. So you could have different groups within the organization that are working with different CSPs, and the CSP sets up a tenant based on a slightly different name for the company, and then you lose control. You might be paying a certain amount because the CSP is setting the price for Azure. As we said, it's list price plus whatever margin the CSP wants to take. So you're going to have multiple CSP, multiple billing centers, and you're not going to have one procurement managing all spend. And that's when things get out of control.
So Microsoft, this new thing, Azure Plan, is designed to tackle that. So Azure Plan will be, as far as I remember, so it's a new thing. It's going to be activated by one CSP, but then other CSPs can join it.
Let's see if it's going to work. We have to see it first. I haven't
seen
it.
We have to see how it's going to work in practice. So 1st of October, we'll see how that's going to change. Lots of webinars are announced on this topic. So I'm attending one tomorrow. Just want to see what our colleagues in software asset management also have to say about it. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting change, aimed at simplifying it, at least for Microsoft. So other cost reduction tools you have on Azure. Let's talk about cost reduction. So use your existing licenses, and we're going to have a whole set of slides today about Azure Hybrid Benefit. You can also use your existing license that you can bring through license mobility through software assurance. Going to have a few words about it as well. Turn off the unused stuff. The taxi meter is ticking, so it's obvious, but not for everyone. If you procured something, the clock is ticking. The meter is ticking. You're paying. Even if you haven't assigned a license, you haven't yet used the reserved instance. You just procured it. The clock is ticking. Then again, the money is already being leaking out. So if you're not using it, turn it off. If you're not using it, cancel it. There are tools in Azure itself, even AI based, that help you to switch off unused resources, and you just need to know how to use them. There are third-party tools. There are providers that provide you those services. Again, some of them are human-driven, some of them are AI-driven, some of them are just purely script automation. So turn off unused stuff. If nobody works on Saturdays and Sundays, or Fridays and Saturdays if you're in the Middle East, switch off the VMs. Simple as that. So, and for long-term workloads, if you're not using Azure reservation on Azure, you're doing something wrong. Because Azure has 1 and 3 year reservations for almost everything. So this is a screenshot from getlicensingready.com. It's, by the way, if you want a purely licensing training, just pure licensing. Yesterday I did the last exam there, so got the master certificate from them as well, just because it's fun. So reservations help you save up to 60-70% of costs of Azure services as compared to being billed per minute. You basically, what you do is you procure something up front. You can even pay monthly. We'll touch on that. But you promise Microsoft that I want this resource, I want this thing for 3 years ahead or 1 year up front. And they give you just a discount in return. I assure you, unless you are playing with some sandbox workloads like, well, I do that, you will have some sort of constant workload in Azure. Use reservations, not using them as silly, because the discounts are just crazy. So,
Alex,
yep.
I just want to interrupt 1 second. It's an interesting topic, and I'd love to hear whoever wants to maybe just share how does their organization work? If they work per reservation or pay as you go, or maybe a mix. Just interesting to share with the group what's currently the most predominant way of purchasing. So if anybody wants to share that with us, please do.
Yeah, there's a good comment from Carl, because he's actually a practitioner. So he's more of a, as far as I understand, Carl, as I remember your profile, you're more that service provider. So I do appreciate your comments today, really, very much, as usual. Availability of reservations are limited to the region of the data center. So maybe, yeah. So yeah. You always have to choose where you want to deploy a resource, and then I have to trust Carl here that some reservations may not be available. The core ones will be. The core reservations, like reserved instances, they should be available everywhere. All right. So yeah. Daryl, we get to our first question for the audience. How about we fire one?
Yeah, let's start off. So let's see. We've got a question here. So I'm going to read this out loud, and then please just share your answer. So when you pay for Azure by an enterprise agreement, okay, again, when you pay for Azure by an enterprise agreement, what price list is used? So we spoke about this. Is it the US dollar global price list, or is it the price list in your local currency? Take a second. These are one of the questions that we're also going to have on the final exam. But this is good practice, just checking to see if you were listening throughout the first 40 minutes. So let's give everybody a couple of minutes to read through it and answer.
Sorry, I've turned myself off for a few seconds.
Yeah, and we got some feedback from Manisha regarding pay-as-you-go. So they use pay-as-you-go. Thank you for that, for sharing.
Start looking at reserved instances and reserved
capacity
and reserved whatnot, and
can save you a lot of money. But that's why you're attending. That's exactly the purpose. And again, every organization has their own limits. Ultimately, as we know, Alex, there are organizations that are limited to pay as you go for various reasons within the organization. Sometimes it's just politics. Others are management constraints. So we know that not everything is as simple as we say it is. Life is much more complex. You need to try work things through.
And we have an amazing audience, Daryl. Nobody said A. Everybody's saying B. Very, very nice. You knew.
They're listening.
So a bit of licensing and a bit of how to save costs. So Windows Server and Azure, how that works. So Windows Server, what the Azure VM cost consists of two parts. One is compute, the other one is Windows Server license. So if you have a Linux virtual machine, that's purely compute. And by the way, reserved instances work for Linux too. There's no Azure hybrid benefit, but it works for Linux too. So by default, if you don't procure reserved instances, you will be paying for everything, both compute, the actual virtual machine, the storage, the networking, the electricity, whatever Microsoft put in that price. And for Windows Server license, again, per minute, billed per hour, calculated per minute, which is the best for temporary workloads. You want to try something out? This is the way. You want to do something long-term, think about cost reduction. Anything long-term, I mean, anything, but that you even imagine is going to be running there for a year. Even if it's changing, and we'll get to that. So for compute, you have an option of procuring reserved instances. For Windows Server license in a virtual machine based on Windows, you have Azure Hybrid benefit. Alone, just reserved instances can save you up to 70%. This figure varies. And if you don't trust me, go today to the Azure pricing calculator and play with it. Because there, you can actually choose an option, reserved instance, and you can see how your price changes. Just calculate it for yourselves. So I'm not making this up. And together with Azure Hybrid benefit, you can save up to 80% of the cost of a virtual machine as compared to paying per minute. But what you must still remember that what you see in the pricing calculator is how much you're going to pay for Azure. So you still need to remember that you must pay for your own license to bring as an Azure Hybrid benefit. Azure Hybrid benefit is supposed to be covered with your own licenses. So in practice, every time we compared costs of licenses either through CSP or through an enterprise agreement, through subscription, with Azure pay-as-you-go prices for Windows Server, your own licenses are always cheaper. Maybe an instance when they're not. I haven't seen it. If you have, I mean, please welcome to the comments. Please let's discuss this. So,
Azure, Alex, so what we've seen, so let's just share 1 second. So what we've seen with our customers is that when you look at the average cost savings, when you take everything, the compute reserved instances and the Windows Server, Azure Hybrid benefits, and you mix in your own costs that you've already brought in, you're saving 45, 50% still, even with that additional cost. So that's a huge real cost benefit. So it's not only what you see the 80%, that's a bit misleading, but the total savings can be up to 50% if managed correctly. That's huge money. And usually Azure costs accelerate over time.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct. So, I've seen 70% savings. That was in the government sector where they have such huge discount on licenses. So the cost of their licenses was almost negligible. So reserved instances, a few things about reserved instances. As I said, best for long-term workloads. And if you're not using them for long-term workloads, you're losing. Simple. 1 and 3 year discounts available through all channels. Not in all regions, as Carl just helped us. And Carl, thank you for reality checks. Not attached to a virtual machine, and this is the beauty. It's not attached to a virtual machine. You don't procure a reserved instance for a single particular virtual machine. Let me explain that. A good comment from Carl. Microsoft wants plannable consumption to scale data. Yes, that's correct. That's what they want. That's why they make your own licenses more attractive, because for them, it's easier to budget and plan and forecast than Azure pay-as-you-go costs. How and where do I get access to the hybrid benefit licenses? So how do I? Okay, I'm getting to that. Thank you for that question. Sorry, I'll skip it because few further slides talk about that.
Got it down the line.
Yes. So when you create, use them if you have any long-term VMs. Linux as well. Works for Linux too, by the way. So when you create it, you have to choose 4 things. And Carl, correct me if I'm wrong here, because this is I'm not a hands-on Azure administrator, so I need some reality check here. But there are 4 things you need to choose: either 1 or 3 year term. Then you need to choose the type of virtual machine that you want to procure as a reserved instance, say D316 or something. And there are various series D, A, M. I don't remember them right now, but what it means series is just a specific configuration of memory and CPUs and maybe redundancy. So certain features. Read about it on the Azure website. Azure location, Datacentre. So not only just United States specific state, or EU London, EU Berlin or wherever Microsoft has locations. So that you need to choose as well when you create it, and then the scope. And the reason I have the diagram on the right side of the slide is that you can choose that reserved instance to apply either to the entire subscription or to all subscriptions, or to one subscription, or just to one resource group. And please pay attention to this. So you may think, okay, I'm reserving an instance. Why would I assign a reserved instance to all subscriptions if when I'm reserving it, I'm thinking about one virtual machine? So what I would like you to understand is, we will get to that in a couple of slides. It's not attached to a virtual machine. You are prepaying for a possibility to be discounted for a virtual machine. So please pay attention, because this is fantastic. I think it's a very good thing. So how this works. And then you can reconfigure all these options. You can reconfigure them at any time. And how do you do this? So term 1 or 3 year. So what you can do, you can actually cancel. Right now, there's no penalty, but there's a limit. So if you're a large company, cancellation may not be a case for you. If you're a small company, no problem. There's a limit of 50K cancellations and refunds that you can get in 12 months. You can go over 50K of refunds. All the money is actually refunded if you cancel. So you can promise to, don't do this, but in theory you can do that. You can promise to Microsoft to consume something for 3 years and then just delete it in 2 months. You will still get a discounted reserved instance without any strings attached. Penalties may be reintroduced. Right now there are no cancellation penalties. It can change, so I don't guarantee it's going to stay like this. You can then upgrade. Well, you also have to. You can't go below your current VM. You can't order a smaller one. You can only order the same or bigger. And when you change location, you actually have to sort of upgrade from a location to location. So your previous reserved instance that was attached to the United States, you want to move it to Germany. You actually have to order a new one. What happens with the previous one is all the money that's left in that subscription is then transferred to the new one. So you're not losing anything. When you reconfigure, when you upgrade, when you change locations, the only thing that changes is the new term starts to count. So imagine you had a 3-year reserved instance. Halfway through, you canceled it. Halfway through that reserved instance, you canceled it. You decided to reconfigure it and upgrade, not cancel. Sorry, not canceled, because that's, if you cancel, it's a different thing. You decide to upgrade it or move it to a different place. You restart a new subscription from that point, and you get refunded the money for the 18 months that you've prepaid. If you have prepaid for the 3 years, it gets into the new subscription. If you paid for it monthly, obviously nothing gets to it. So it's a bit complicated. But then what I want to emphasize here, it's very flexible. The only thing that's not available is downgrade. So if you want to downgrade your reserved instance, there's no option, but there are ways to still continue using it with smaller VMs. I'm getting there. And then if you want to change the scope, either all subscriptions or just one subscription and whatnot, you just reassign. So it's changeable. And I have these numbers here. So this is the way I usually consider this, how to change something in Azure in regards to reserved instances. I first think about, shall we reassign it? Other VMs will pick it up. Other VMs will become just discounted. Or can we upgrade it? Can we cancel? That's the other things. So, as I said, reserved instances are not attached to VM. They actually attached to a family of virtual machines. So D3, good example. So if you order D3, that is a Microsoft. There's a unit calculator on the Azure website. If you order D3 for 8 units, and then you look at this. This is a calendar. This is a calendar graph. Beginning of 2022, you shut down the virtual machine. What happens then? Your reserved instance does not get canceled. Azure then looks for, in the same family, D3 smaller machines, it looks for other VMs and starts discounting them for the same number of units. If there's no equivalent 8-unit VM, it's just going to discount 2 4-unit VMs if you have them. And if you have a bigger virtual machine, part of it is being discounted and part of it goes on a meter. So you pay as you go just for that half on top. Just Crazy stuff, completely crazy stuff. Great, just love it. So this is what this is all about. Reserved instances. Azure Hybrid Benefit, bring your own license stuff. So for Windows Server, it works for both Windows Server Standard and Windows Server Datacentre, with the difference is that Windows Server Datacentre may be used simultaneously at the same time on premises and attached to Azure virtual machines at the same time. Windows Server Standard cannot. We'll get to it very quickly. So which sorts of licenses you may use for Azure Hybrid Benefits? Licenses, perpetual licenses with active software assurance, subscription licenses through an enterprise agreement or any open value program because they have software assurance built in the subscription. So this is a software assurance benefit. But in CSP, there's no software assurance. But in CSP, there are subscription licenses for Azure. Only Windows Server Standard. Windows Server Datacentre is not available on Azure. But many companies deploy Azure Reserved Instances and then purchase Azure subscription licenses through a CSP. They do it through one partner. That's because it's convenient. And therefore, they get both benefits of reserved instances and CSP subscription discount license as compared to just pay as you go. Hope it makes sense. So what I would like you to remember is you need software assurance, and you may only simultaneously use Datacentre licenses, and only simultaneously between your on-premises, whichever, and Azure virtual machines. So Windows Server Standard, is there any simultaneous use? Yes. There is a dual use rights for 180 days during the one-way migration to Azure. Then you must remove them from either Azure or on-premises. You must then attach them to one place. And if you attach them to Azure, you can only assign them back in 90 days. So there's a bit of a caveat there. You can't just take them back immediately. Assign them today, then bring them back to on-premises tomorrow. Windows Server Datacentre, as I said, dual use is allowed between on-premises and Azure virtual machines, and dual use is not allowed between on-premises hosts and Azure dedicated hosts. So Azure Hybrid Benefit also allows you to take your Datacentre licenses and assign them to Azure dedicated hosts in exactly the same way you use them on premises, exactly the same way. But that right only has 180 days allowance, only. So no dual use right. And then you get all the unlimited virtualization stuff. Dedicated hosts work almost exactly as on premises. Not necessarily exactly like that, but almost. So how to calculate licenses that you need to bring to Azure? So it's actually not rocket science at all. So the minimum of Windows Server licenses that you can bring to Azure, you can't do less than that, is 16. Then all the licensing, the second rule is all the VMs are licensed in 8 core increments. 8 core single licenses. What I like about, by the way, Get Licensing Ready is what they did it specifically for people like Carl. I'm looking at you. So you buy them in packs, but you assign them in groups. Groups, not packs, of 8 licenses. Therefore, there's another thing, which is another big point of discussion, and I'm seeing people again misinforming partners and customers. Is that a 16-core pack, because you're not assigning packs, you're assigning groups, can be split between 2 virtual machines. As long as they are 8 cores or below 8 cores, you can, with one pack, you can cover 2 machines. And if somebody tells you otherwise, this is my message to them. Yes, one 16-core pack can be assigned to 2 virtual machines. Right. Those who understood. So virtual machine cost reduction, how it works, just a reminder, because they work differently. And the 2 very key things. How do you turn on a reserved instance? You buy it. Is it attached to a virtual machine? No, it's not. As I showed you, as long as you delete a virtual machine, the system picks up other virtual machines to apply that discount to. Very important. As your hybrid benefit, you have to attach it manually and you have to detach it manually. There's no automatic reallocation. There's no automatic reassignment. You have to go into the management portal. And when you either procure a VM, you say, I want to use Azure Hybrid Benefit. Or for a running VM, you can click, you just turn on the switch and the system stops billing you per minute. Yeah. So
let me take this, Alex. You take a sip of water. So just to close off the subject, we've got another trivia question for you guys and ladies. So you procured a reserved instance, then you deleted the virtual machine. Okay, you procured a reserved instance, you deleted the machine. What happens next? 3 options. A, you must reassign reserved instances. B, you lose your reserved instance entirely. It's gone. Or it is reassigned automatically. Okay, you must reassign, you lose your reserved instance, or it's reassigned automatically. We covered this. 2 minutes. Let's see what you remember from the session.
Daniel, if you don't mind, I'll pick one question because it's important. So I had it on the slide. I didn't stop on it. What is October 2019 deadline to migrate on-premise licenses served on Azure? So what happened on the 1st of October 2019 is Microsoft said 4 providers, Azure included, by the way, Azure, AWS, Google, and Alibaba. They call them listed providers. All the other providers are called authorized outsources. It's crazy terminology. You don't have to remember it, but just remember that the 4 biggest providers, you can't anymore bring your licenses without software assurance to dedicated hosts. In all the other providers, SPLA providers, third-party providers, any kind of private public clouds, if you have dedicated hardware, you can bring your own licenses without limitations. Yeah. And it used to be the same in all these 4 providers as well. So on the 1st of October 2019, Microsoft said, you can't do this anymore. You have to have software assurance. You have to, not only just software assurance, you have to have license mobility through software assurance rights. And what's important about it is that Windows Server doesn't have license mobility through software assurance. So you may not bring your own Windows Server to Datacentre, to all those data centers, with the exception of Azure, because that doesn't apply to Azure Hybrid Benefit. Okay? Do you like it? But then there's another level of complexity, which is it's a 2-sided coin. If you bought a license before 1st of October 2019, then you may bring it to a dedicated host. What I suggest is don't do that unless you have already configured it, you already had it running, you already had licenses assigned, then don't touch it. But if you're deploying something new, don't play with fire, because you'll then have to prove it. You'll then have to show you evidence that it's still on the license. It's a pain. So this is what happened on the October 1st, 2019. Google it, read about it, go to the product terms website, find the term called listed providers, and read everything that's connected to it. Very fascinated reading. I can promise you. So yeah,
the correct. What's the right answer?
C. It's reassigned automatically, as I showed you, and we get the majority of questions or answers that we have are correct. So let's move on. Let's not waste too much time on just the chatter. And SQL Server in Azure. SQL Server is, confusingly, not very much, is available in 3 different ways in Azure. So one is a virtual machine, just as Windows, but then with a SQL Server installed in it. And that is what is called IaaS, Infrastructure as a Service. It's your virtual machine, you configure it, you manage it entirely, including SQL in it. And there are 2 platform as a service offerings for SQL. One is a managed SQL Server instance. Microsoft takes care of the server. It provides you an instance of SQL Server. And the smallest one is SQL Server Database. They work in a very similar way. All these 3 solutions, to be honest, in regards to Azure Hybrid Benefit, work exactly the same. They just use a bit different terminology. So let me explain this. So it's, again, not rocket science. Microsoft tried and almost succeeded to make Azure Hybrid Benefit easy to understand. So with the virtual machine, we just have a third component as compared to Windows Server, which is the SQL Server license. So you have all the options that you have for a normal Windows Server virtual machine, Plus, you also have Azure hybrid benefit for SQL. So it should be simple to understand. So how this works. So no simultaneous use rights, either standard or enterprise. You can use them either on premises or on Azure. You have to move the licenses, have to move them. There's 180-day simultaneous use for one-way migration to Azure, not backwards. So remember that. Again, all channels, same requirements, software assurance is required, or you can buy an Azure subscription in CSP. Subscription licenses in CSP for SQL Server and use them in Azure. They get the same Azure hybrid benefit. Should be simple. As I said, all you need to remember is that it doesn't apply to licenses without software assurance or to perpetual license without software assurance. That's it. How to calculate licenses? So different minimums. The minimum is not 8 as for Windows Server, it's 4. Then the other rule, if you remember, I told you about Windows. So you license Windows servers in increments of 8 cores. SQL Server, you license in increments of 2. So if you have a bigger VM than 4 cores, you just need to assign more licenses. Simple as that. So cross-edition assignment is possible, and this is something you don't get anywhere else in the entire Microsoft licensing. It's a fantastic feature, and I'll give you a hint how to save money. Also, as on premises, SQL Server Enterprise only, not standard, gets the right for unlimited virtualization on dedicated hosts. Say exactly the same as it would have been. So then calculation rules will be exactly the same as on premises. And we're gonna when we're gonna explain you on premises Windows Server and SQL Server in 4 weeks from now. So Wednesday, 4 weeks from now, we're gonna be talking about on premises SQL and Windows. So look at this virtual machine. This is SQL Server Enterprise, 8 cores. And normally, on premises or anywhere else, you would be thinking, I need 8 cores of SQL Server Enterprise, and this is my only option. No, there are 2 options. With a multiplier of 4, you may assign 32 SQL Server standard licenses to this virtual machine and license it. So there's a lot of flexibility. If you have a 4-core VM, you need 16 SQL Server standard cores. So you may choose the edition. The only thing is you need to remember is between standard and enterprise, there's a 4-to-1 multiplier or divider, however you see it. Works the other way around as well. So an 8-core SQL Server standard VM may be licensed with 2 SQL Server Enterprise licenses, core licenses. And I recently did a calculation for a Canadian company, and we found out that 2 SQL Server Enterprise core licenses is cheaper than 8 SQL Server standard licenses. How good is that? So little things here and there. There's a Russian proverb saying something like a chicken gets full by eating small seeds. So I guess you get the idea here. So unlimited virtualization, as I said, for SQL Server Enterprise only, works on dedicated hosts, same licensing rules as on premise. Let's not waste time too much. So if you're asking, do I have unlimited virtualization for SQL Server Enterprise on dedicated hosts? Yes, you do. That's the answer. So that was about IaaS. Platform as a service, managed SQL Server instance, and managed SQL Server database. Same thing, different terminology. Exactly same formulas, different terminology.
Alex, I just want to interrupt before you move on. Just a thought. Are these benefits the same for Azure as for AWS or for other cloud providers, or there are stipulations only for Azure? Just out of
so that is a fantastic question. This is an unfair competitive benefit that Microsoft created for itself. It's Azure only. That's why it's called Azure or Azure Hybrid Benefits. That is why it only applies to.
Use it on any other cloud provider.
In this way, no.
Okay.
If you wanna use if you wanna bring your own license to any other cloud provider, you have to utilize the right that is called license mobility through software assurance, on which I have 2 slides. As I said, platform as a service works exactly in the same manner. It just uses the word capacity instead of instance. So you reserve capacity. Same. 1 or 3 year, available through all channels. Same thing. I can skip through these slides very quickly. Nothing's going to change. The only difference is that In addition to types of workloads, you also have to choose performance tier, business critical or general purpose or hyperscale. So what are those performance tiers? For licensing purposes, performance tiers equal editions. We're getting there, so I'm going to simplify this. But the logic is the same. The logic of reconfiguration is exactly the same as with Windows Server VMs. Cancellation, exchange, reassignment. In the same, I am suggesting this order. It may not be your view. This is what I'm suggesting, 1, 2, 3, how I'm suggesting to approach this. And reserved capacity is also not attached to a database. The only thing is, if you remember, I told you about the virtual machines. The reassignment automatically only happens between the same family of virtual machines. It cannot go from D3 to M2. Here is locked in the combination, almost like a matrix, vertical and horizontal, if you can imagine those lines. It's locked in a tier and type. Inside it, Azure will be trying to provide you the best discount possible as long as you have a reserved capacity. So you say you procured reserved capacity of 16 cores, it then can be reassigned to 2 instances, 8 cores each, or it can be, with a bigger instance, it could cover half of the instance. So it still does that magic in the background. Just remember, it won't be reassigned to a different tier. Same as your hybrid benefits. I specifically graded out because it's the same rules about what license are eligible for how long. It's exactly the same. Now, when you think general purpose or hyperscale, for the licensing purposes, think SQL Server Standard, because that's how it's licensed. So you either assign an equal number of licenses of SQL Server Standard cores, or divided by 4 SQL Server Enterprise, and then business critical equals enterprise. So here you have to multiply by 4 to calculate the number of required SQL Server Standard licenses. And we have a question for you, another quiz.
Okay, so let me take this. Okay, can you assign SQL Standard licenses to a SQL Enterprise virtual machine? Simple. It's either
In
yes
Azure.
or it's a no. In Azure, of course, we're talking about Azure. Again, can you assign SQL Standard licenses to a SQL Enterprise virtual machine in Azure?
I don't know if I have any questions to answer. I guess
Carl's just having some fun here with the possibilities of other cloud providers.
Well, it depends where you are. There are certain countries where AWS are
very strong. Yeah,
almost the entire market under under themselves. Can you assign SQL Server license to SQL Server virtual machine? So sorry, just a comment in Azure. In Azure. Okay, so I have to go back to that slide. Yes, you can. So the majority of respondees answer no. Yes, through Azure hybrid benefit. If I go to that slide, where is that? Sorry, let me go back. Let me scroll. Can I scroll quicker, faster? SQL Server Enterprise. Yes, if you multiply the cores by 4, you can. That only exists in Azure. Only in Azure. You can't do this on premises. Yeah. You can't do this in Supply. You can't do this anywhere else. You can't do this at Azure. That was a very tricky question. So sorry if I haven't explained it well. So stuff beyond SQL Server and Windows Server. So no Azure hybrid benefit, but you can still bring your own licenses. And in this case, remote desktop access, you have to bring your own licenses. So you may know that in Azure, you don't need Windows Server CALs, client access licenses. You don't need them. But RDS, remote desktop client access licenses, if you deploy a remote desktop, Windows Server-based remote desktop solution, you must have RDS CALs. And you cannot procure them through Azure. You have to combine. So you can't do this on the pay-as-you-go principle anyhow. So you have to either bring your own licenses that you bought through any other program which are covered with an active software assurance. There's dual use rights. You can use them both on premises and in the cloud provider or in Azure. Or you can rent, if you don't have RDS CALs, you can rent RDS SALs subscriber access licenses from a SPLA provider. It's a bit tricky, but you can do that. And this is what CSP and SPLA providers do often, because I deal with SPLA providers mostly, and many of them now are also CSPs, cloud solution providers, and cloud solution resellers. So what they do is they deploy a solution for you, and then they basically charge you for RDS SALs if you don't have CALs with SA. So you have to. This is that one instance, at least one. The one that immediately comes to mind. I have a video on this channel on Some Expert TV that actually talks about this more in more details. I'm explaining all these rules with all the quotes from product terms. So you must bring it. If you deploy a remote desktop solution for your users, so 2 connections, admin connections, you get for free. More than 2, you have to have CALs. So then the next thing, so dedicated hosts. So bring your own licenses. Remember I told you about the cutoff date of the 1st of October 2019? So that's what it is. So if you bought these licenses before the 1st of October 2019, you can still bring them to the dedicated host. Software assurance is not required. It's just like a free-for-all thing. If you bought them later, unfortunately, you fall under that big change, under which you can only bring licenses that are covered with software assurance and that only have license mobility through software assurance right. Where do you look that up? In product terms. Find the product, and I'm giving you an example of Windows Server here. Find the product, scroll to software assurance. You see there's like a selector on top. This is software assurance. Scroll to software assurance and look up license mobility. And if it says here, and here it says external connector only, what it means is there is no license mobility through software assurance for Windows Server. So you may not bring your licenses, Windows Server licenses, to a third-party provider or to basically to any third-party provider. You must procure licenses through them as a service, always. Unless it's Azure, and you can use Azure hybrid benefits. How great is that? Oh, Microsoft is trying to make Azure more appealing.
Alex, before you move on, can you just take one question from Carl regarding RDS?
Can RDS CALs be used on premises and Azure at the same time? Yes. So Carl, please watch that video which I have on this channel. How about per user per device? It's the same rule. It's the same rule. They're just CALs. Nobody controls them in Azure. It's up to you how you count them, how you control them, how you calculate them. It's entirely up to you. I always advise using user CALs because these days they just make more sense and they're easier to control and user licenses. But if you still have device licenses, say you have a retail solution and you have like 10 people rotating around one terminal, obviously you may still use device CALs. There's no limit on user and device, no limit, absolutely. And I give all the quotes in that video. It's in the recorded live sessions. One of my Monday morning Microsoft geek things for the geeks. How charges billing happens for RDS. As I told you, Datacentre, you can't buy them on Azure. You just can't. You can either buy them as licenses or you can buy them through SPLA. There's no Azure billing for RDS CALs or SALs. It's crazy. So Microsoft Online services licensing. So Microsoft 365, Office 365 and whatnot, all the 365 things. The only thing we decided not to cover today, we're going to have a different video, is Windows 365, which is a new thing. We need to digest it even more. The rules are published, but I'm expecting them to change by October. And then we'll have just a video explaining that. Or maybe a live event, which will be short, 30 minutes something. It's not a long topic. So on this slide, you can see the kind of the major families of Microsoft. So Microsoft online offerings, which are not Azure offerings, other offerings. The majority of these offerings, rather not Power Apps, maybe Power Platform, because it combines Power BI, Power Platforms, all the other Power things. So the majority of these offerings are licensed per user. So your main metric is user. There are exceptions, though, but all the trainings and even we today, we're going to be talking mostly about users. Just bear in mind that there are, for certain organizations in certain sectors, in certain government and academic organizations, there are Office 365 subscriptions per device available, which makes it a bit more complicated. But I doubt you're going to see it. I doubt you're going to see it, at least very often. And there are some complex metrics, like if you think about Power Apps, it's apps per user. So it's not just the user; it's also capacity. So in online services, there are some services that are almost purely capacity based, but they're not Azure. So then again, when we talk about Microsoft Online services, mostly we're talking about Office 365, the flagman, the hero offering, Microsoft 365, Office 365, Windows 10 per user, and EMS. So how you buy them? You can buy them online. This is how I buy them. You can buy them through a volume licensing agreement, enterprise agreement. Obviously, this is how they were sold when they just appeared. And you can buy them through a CSP. So all the major channels, by all means. So we'll start with Windows 10 per user. I'd like you to firstly to show you that in the enterprise agreement route, there are more options available. There are not just full licenses, which are not full. They are not full licenses. They're not. But there are also add-ons and step-ups, and I'll explain to you how they work right now. So why is it not the full license? So all these licenses are upgrades. So in the Microsoft volume licensing, it's always been like this, that any license that you buy for Windows operating system through a volume license program, they're all upgrades. They require a qualifying operating system to be installed under them. And normally, if you think about previous years, you would normally buy Windows Enterprise per device upgrade. So if you bought Windows Enterprise per device in an enterprise agreement, they're always upgrades. You can't install them on empty computers. No, you can't. Then if you think about full subscription licenses, let's say in CSP for Windows Enterprise, they also require pre-installed operating system, but they are licensed per user. Come in 2 weeks, we're going to be discussing this in much more details. I'm going to be explaining how this works. Then if say you have an enterprise agreement and you bought license per device, you have Windows Enterprise per device, you decided, because there are more features, add security features, to migrate them all to per user licensing. You can actually buy an add-on midterm. You can switch at the renewal to per user licenses in an enterprise agreement. You can switch at an annual date. So say a year past the second year, since you signed an agreement, you can switch. But then if you want to do this midterm, or you want to try, for some of your users, you want to try that. You want to migrate gradually, which is, by the way, a very sane thing to do. You buy an add-on. And then if you bought E3, you can step them up in only the enterprise agreement from E3 to E5. Just for a little fee. You don't buy E5. You don't lose the money. You buy an upgrade. Step up. It's not upgrade. It's a step up. It's very important to remember the terminology here. So the reason, actually, by the way, I used Windows 1X is because Microsoft has announced the availability date for Windows 11, which is 5th of October. So yeah, well, welcome to the brave new world. There are very significant, maybe deal-breaking differences between enterprise agreement channel and CSP channel for exactly the same license. So Windows Enterprise E3, look at this. You don't have downgrade rights in CSP. You don't have long-term term services channel in CSP. You cannot deploy Windows 10 VDIs on premises under CSP, only in Azure or in a qualified multi-tenant hosting provider. You may not deploy them on premises. So these may all be deal breaking. About re-imaging rights, that's a funny one. Technically, strictly speaking, because you don't have re-imaging rights, you may not deploy Windows Server Enterprise bought through CSP to your computers. How that works is you deploy professional, And then when they activate it with their login, because it's per user, it becomes enterprise. And then when that subscription stops, it becomes professional again. You may not deploy enterprise on computers. So please remember that right now, and I am expecting this to change. I'm expecting this to be, to some of these features to be brought into CSP. As of right now, this is the limitation. So you must be mindful about how you buy Windows 10 licenses, and also the overarching umbrella M365, Microsoft 365 bundle. Well, we'll get to that, by the way. So Office 365, available in all the channels, but you have to pay attention to what's available in which package. So we deliberately decided, because we're not selling licenses today, not to cover, what's included in what package. So there are various offerings. So what starts with F is for frontline workers. What starts with E is for enterprise. There's a bit of a mixture there. So, but F is designed for frontline people, like your drivers, your delivery agents. Anyway, read about it on, in sales materials. So, but what I have to emphasize is that all these packages are available on all the channels. Office 365 has add-on licenses. It's the same as for Windows 10 add-ons. So if you want to migrate some of your people from Office Professional plus a set of cows in a traditional enterprise agreement, you're only starting your journey into the cloud. You can buy add-ons. They require qualifying licenses. You don't lose the qualifying licenses. You buy add-on, you get the right to use Office 365 in the cloud. So you can either buy just full subscriptions, or you can do with add-ons. You can do that as well. So if you see a word add-on, or if you think, how do I do this cheaper? How do I save how do I minimize the costs of my migration? Think add-ons. Think add-ons. There's another discount available, but not during the term. So add-ons work during the term. MPSA works when you already fully paid for perpetual license with software assurance, and you want a discount. Then Microsoft sells you full Office 365 subscriptions, and the product description, the SKU, the stock keeping unit, the part number, has MPSA in its name. From software assurance, you are migrating from traditional on-premises licenses to Office 365 MPSA. Feature-wise, exactly the same thing. It's just a discount as a recognition of your previous software assurance commitment. You may only procure it at anniversary, in an enterprise agreement only, or at a renewal. That's it. So usually it's acquired instead of renewing the site. That's you do a switch. So qualifying license, as I said, must be fully paid for. So it's a bit vague, but how Microsoft worded is, you must have had it for at least 3 years. And this is how it works. So you had your qualifying license with software assurance, and then you flip to, on the calendar line, this way. You flip from on-premises with SA to from SA user subscription licenses. USL stands for user subscription license.
Alex,
simple.
Alex, yeah. Do you lose your perpetual licenses once you use the SKU?
That is a very interesting question. No, you don't. So answering your question straight away, no, you don't. And there's another caveat. In the European Union, you can even resell them on the second-hand market. So for a few years, Microsoft has been trying to curb that, because they had a caveat in product terms that you must keep your perpetual licenses. They have recently removed it. So it wasn't there, then it was brought in, then it was removed a few months ago, because there are a few high-profile cases against Microsoft. I know at least one in the UK, where basically Microsoft is about to be taken to court for violation of anti-monopoly, antitrust laws.
So the bottom line is that even if you do use this SKU that provides you with additional discounting, you don't lose your perpetual rights to your last version of Office. So it's a win-win.
Carl is rightfully saying Windows to Go is deprecated, so we can delete it from the rights. Yes, I think. Yeah, thank you, Carl, for that note. We need to delete it. What else do we have? Still have a solutions activation. Okay, so we'll get to that a bit later, Carl. So thank you for your comments. The term states that you may retain the qualified licenses. You must retain that. You must retain the qualified license was removed recently. That's correct, not me. You must. You had to retain them, not anymore. You don't have to. And there's a if you follow me on LinkedIn, I just recently made a post about it a few days ago, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a week ago, and there was an interesting discussion with Tyrone Holland, who used to work for Microsoft, very knowledgeable person, extremely knowledgeable. Very few people know licensing as well as he does. And we had a whole discussion about it. Look it up. It may be entertaining if you like. If you're entertained by licensing, that's going to entertain you. So moving on to the next slides. Enterprise mobility and security is basically like a Microsoft cybersecurity package. So it's a serious thing. Me and Daryl, we actually personally know admins that love it. They migrate into Microsoft E5 from competing products, although the competing products are cheaper. So it's up to them. They want it. We can't stop them. Available in all the channels. There are the two packages, basically E3 and E5. And what's very interesting is Microsoft recently brought EMS3 into frontline M365 packages. I'll show you in a few slides. I'll show you that. So Microsoft 365. Just to remind you, it's a bundle. It's a bundle that consists of Office 365 plans, Windows 10 plans. Some of the Microsoft 365 plans include Windows 10, not all, and EMS. And then again, EMS is not necessarily included everywhere, so let's look at that. So these are the differences, the key differences. There are more, but please pay attention that if you want to buy business plans, there's a user limit of 300. You can't buy more. You can then unassign those subscriptions and buy enterprise. You can start with business subscriptions if you want to. But where you can be caught really, really painfully is the second part. So client apps, this is easy to understand. You just go to the Microsoft website. It's written there. The F1, F3 doesn't have client applications that you may install on your laptops, right? But with shared computer activation, it's a bit more painful because what it is, lots of companies have Citrix-based solutions or server-based solutions or something like that, where people working from home can access Office on premises. So if you deploy Office 365, you have to have all these users that access it must have shared computer activation rights. And that is only provided through E5 and E3. Pay attention to that. Could really become non-compliant like this. Windows 10, notice, is not included in every single Microsoft 365 offerings. Notably, F1 doesn't have Windows 10 or Windows 11. Then EMS is, I would say, fine. It's not included in business plans. It's never supposed to be included in business plans. But it's included in frontline plans. And it's a very... So what Microsoft did is actually something that I didn't expect them to do. They actually brought a pretty powerful package, EMS3, into F1 plans. There's another thing that can become non-compliant very easily. So you may not assign frontline F1 or F3 to users whose primary device, the one that they use, like their laptop or their tablet, their primary device is more than 10 inches screen size. The screen size is more than 10 inches, 10.1 inches anyway. That's an important limitation. So if they use a computer as their primary device on a daily basis, it's not a shared computer, not a terminal or something like that. It's their computer. You may not assign F1 or F3 plans to those people. They must be licensed with something else. I had a question, by the way. Yesterday, somebody asked me, what if I procure business standard, but I still need Windows 10? Just buy it additionally. Nobody prevents you from buying them separately. We have a few questions, so it would be worth mentioning the fantastic benefit of downgrade rights using the from SA, the best way to manage migration without requiring multiple licenses. Yeah, I will mention it. Thank you for that. That's a very thank you, Stephen. That's a very good comment. What's this? Shared computer license. Fantastic. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. So thanks, Carl. Right. So Microsoft 365. There's a new SKU, new option. We managed the project. We helped the customer to optimize their EA costs recently, a couple of months ago. And this is when I saw the unified bundle for the first time. It costs cheaper than non-unified bundle. License-wise, it's exactly the same. The only difference is that in your admin console, if you buy M365 traditional package, not non-unified, you will see separate licenses for components in your Office 365 admin. With the unified SKU, you have one license. Easier to manage, easier to maintain compliance, but it completely, puts cost management under a huge firewall. So it's less transparent. The costs, who's using what, you need to look deeper. You can still do that using built-in tools, but it just becomes more difficult to granularly control the costs. So you now have one license assigned to use. So the bad
Alex,
thing.
Alex, let's just mention here one caveat that that once you do take the unified bundle SKU and you do get a reduction in the cost, a few percentage points, you have to reassign the component-based licenses in your portal to the unified SKU. Now, it might seem like a very daunting exercise if you've got hundreds or thousands of users. You can use a script, very easy to write. The resellers, the CSPs have it, or the LSPs, and then you just automatically migrate all those users. But you've got a, what was it, 30 days or 60-day window
I don't
do
remember.
that migration. I can't remember exactly. Just keep that caveat in mind. But it's from a financial perspective, it's worthwhile going down that route.
By the way, sorry, Carl, going back to your comment, because I want to go back to very quickly shared computer activation. You can't deploy it if you don't have E3.5 license. So this is the problem. You may have 100 people with E3.5, and you may then deploy a solution with the shared computer license, and then I don't really know what's going to happen if somebody with F1 is going to go to that computer. Will they have to activate it? Technically, how is that going to work? So somebody, a particular user, doesn't have the SLS rights. So I read a white paper on the Microsoft website about compliance, and I have a slide about compliance in the cloud. And what they say is there's a possibility that users without SLS can actually access and use an instance that was installed through SLS. So it may become a problem. It's good when you have everybody covered with one package, but if you have a mixture, which is what we advise doing, having a properly tuned, fine-tuned mixture. So you need to remember these things. So it's exactly as Office 365. I'm not going to stop on the slides. So Microsoft 365 has add-ons and from SA licenses with that fantastic benefit that Microsoft E3 and the 5 only these two plans give you a right to install, deploy Office Professional Plus with a few caveats. Very important. I have a long video about it on my channel again. Only one primary device of a licensed user may have it installed. Only one device. So if a user is licensed and they have 5 devices, only one copy is allowed. Only locally, so no terminal server rights. And we played with hypothetical scenarios with Daryl today, and what I came up with is a real one. A company has Office 2016 deployed in terminal server, and they used to have perpetual licenses with Office 2016. So their devices are all licensed for 2016. Therefore, they're licensed for the terminal server as well. They may deploy under this right Office 2019 or even Office 2021 when it's released. So they may not deploy 2019 or 2021 in the terminal server because they won't be licensed for it. So this is a local right. It was introduced just to help companies migrate from on-prem to the cloud. That's it. That's why it was there. Microsoft threatened to remove it twice officially. I saw it in product terms saying we're going to remove it 1st of March. They didn't. It's still there. I have an answer to my question from Carl. It's not possible, as the license is checked on login and checked every 30 days. Okay. Well, good note. Thank you. Good to know. So one thing less to worry about. There are channel differences. So all I said about Windows 10 still applies here. All I said about what I said about Windows 10 was not available in Windows 10. In Microsoft 365, you may know that Microsoft 365 subscriptions, E3, E5, give you a right to deploy an unlimited number of Exchange, SharePoint, and Skype for Business servers on premises. Only those users who are licensed with the 3 and the 5 are allowed to access them, but they are. So that right is not available through CSP. You may not deploy any on-premises service, Office service, under E3 or E5, bought through CSP. Please remember that. Well, CSP is not designed for on-prem. Let's be honest about it. Project and Visio are two very peculiar licenses. So subscriptions themselves are easier than Office. You have Visio Plan 1 and Plan 2, and Project Plan 1, Plan 3, Plan 5. I don't remember why, but it's how they numbered. So Project Plan 3 and 5 and Visio Plan 2, under those plans, you may install, a licensed user may install a copy of, again, is it one copy? Because that's not clarified. A copy of either Project Standard or Project Professional, or under Visio Standard or Visio Professional, so any edition of the version 2016 or prior. Why it was done? Look at the requirement. The device must be running Office Standard or Professional Plus. Because it's not because basically the online versions, the executable files, the installation binaries are not compatible with Office Standard, Office Professional Plus. That's why Microsoft said, fine, install previous versions and just traditional editions under that license. Makes it a bit difficult to manage because it's not anymore controlled by activations. You have to micromanage in an Excel spreadsheet or in Snow or in Flexera in any other tool if it even supports this. You need to actually track these licenses, how they are signed. That nothing is violated. And the one thing that is very, very interesting here is you're only allowed to install 2016 or prior. You're not allowed to install Project or Visio 2019. Pay attention to this little detail, please. Tenant-wide licenses. So I have a video on my channel where I talk about it as a compliance issue. So I actually did clarify it just before this training. I talked to a few people. I read a few other materials. So right now I changed my opinion. I consider it to be more of a technical risk than a compliance issue, because how Microsoft worded is basically there are some security features that you activate for one user, buy for one user. It's activated for every user in the tenant. By default, right now there are no technical abilities in Office 365 to limit access to that feature to other users. So in theory, every user may access that feature and trigger licensing requirements. So what Microsoft is saying, which is very much unlike Microsoft, but probably because they understand it's their problem, they haven't given you the tools. What Microsoft is saying right now, you don't need to license every user that has a theoretical possibility to access a license. A license is required for those who intend. There's an intent to use it. So that's a good thing, because that's not really a compliance risk. So another thing about tenant-wide licenses, sorry for sighing, I'm getting a bit tired, to be honest. I have to admit it, yes, I am. Effort should be taken, as Microsoft says, that's their quote, effort should be taken to limit access. They give you for some tenant-wide licenses, there are ways and workarounds how you can limit access to users via policies, via templates, other scripts, PowerShell scripts. So it's not an easy interface. It's not a box that you can take in Office 365 admin. But for some of them, Microsoft, the majority of them actually, Microsoft gives you tools. And what they say is, please pay attention to how you assign them, how you give people access, how they accidentally get access. Because when they introduce the per-user assignment, that may break functionality. So they encourage you to take it under control with the tools available to help avoid potential disruption. Hope it makes sense. Daryl, please pick this question slide.
Yeah,
If you
please. So, absolutely. So I think this is one of the last questions that we have. You bought a Windows 10 under E3 or a Windows 10 E3 license from a CSP. May you deploy Windows 8.1? This is a bit confusing, but just remember what Alex spoke about regarding downgrade rights. Again, it's a Windows 10 E3 license purchased under CSP. May you deploy Windows 8.1? A simple yes or no.
Thank you, Daryl. Right,
Alex, just drink some water. Just take a
lot of questions from Carl.
No,
I
Carl
would have to leave the room.
very
Just bear with me.
knowledgeable.
I have to leave the room to bring some water in here.
Yeah, let's give Alex a break. He's been going at this for now an hour 45, so I think he deserves a minute break. Okay, so I see answers are coming in. Let's just give everybody one more minute. Yeah, please participate. This is what really makes this very interactive and fun, especially after a long session. This really brings up our energy and especially Alex's energy. So we've got no, we've got B and B and B. So it looks like everybody's been listening. So I'm very happy to.
So, by the way, please stay with us. So we'll probably make it on time. So we've got 11 minutes left, and we've got about 11 full-on slides. So we should be right on time. Please don't drop off. Wait until the end. We're actually doing pretty well today. I'm not too rushed because Carl complained to me personally last time that the previous training was a bit too fast. So no, you cannot downgrade. So that's a good one. So through CSP, you cannot through E8. You can only do it through an enterprise agreement. So Dynamics 365. So ladies and gentlemen, word of warning. So Dynamics 365 requires full-on 2 hours or 3 hours training. Thus, we only have 10 minutes. I'm going to give you the principles because this training is all about principles. If I might publish a poll, so if Daryl, please, take me accountable for it. I might publish a poll either on YouTube or on LinkedIn, so that's not decided. And if I get more than 100 people saying yes, we want it, we might do somewhere in November, December, closer to Christmas, a dedicated 1 hour Dynamics 365 detailed training. So I'm not accepting requests right now. This is going to be done properly through a poll. Community must decide because if the interest is low, these trainings take a lot of effort to create. So Dynamics 365 is a set of various CRM and ERP and e-commerce and other stuff solutions that Microsoft used to keep very much separate from all the other offerings. So in the previous on-premises times, so I, as a licensing consultant or an LSP or anyone else, we didn't even have access to the entitlements to how it's licensed. We didn't know how it's licensed because it was a club of people just doing Dynamics partners. They lived in this separate bubble, very protected, almost like Oracle. You couldn't learn how it's licensed. Nowadays, it's all different. It's all now just sold through normal channels. It's one of the flagship offerings of Microsoft. Microsoft really wants everybody to switch to Dynamics 365, even if you don't want it. So there are on-premises ERP and CRM, and let's not talk about it because that's an on-premises stuff that's very complicated. It's very complicated. So, but there are online CRM and ERP, Dynamics 365 solutions. And they differ from all the other Microsoft products and services because basically they consist of applications. So they themselves also broken into sub-apps: sales, marketing, finance, customer service. And there are base subscription licenses called team member licenses. We'll get to that. I have a slide about team member licenses, which give you access to all the functionality of either CRM or ERP. But for all the other modules, you need licenses. You need licenses that give you access to those modules. Then the question arises, how do you license access to 2 modules for 1 user? Do you need to buy 2 full licenses? Because, well, they are pretty expensive. So there's a concept based on attach. And by the way, I encourage you after this training to go on YouTube and search something like Dynamics 365 licensing based on attach song. There's a company that implements, I don't remember the name. They implement Office 365, and they wrote a song, and they published it as a YouTube video, like base and attach, something like that. So so we discussed it today with Daryl. So this is taken from a document called Dynamics 365 Licensing Guide, a very comprehensive document. And the crazy thing about Dynamics 365 is that its licensing is updated on a monthly basis. Every month there's something new. It's a very dynamic, very agile, very fresh, not yet properly ripened licensing model. So you may notice here, so why base and attach? Basically, base license is full price. Attach is when the user is licensed with 1 base license. All the other modules, not all of them, other modules, can be bought as attached license, which are discounted, almost 1/5 of the price of a full license, 1/4, 1/5 of the full license. Huge discount. So you don't pay twice for the full license to access to all the functionality. You pay once for the most expensive one, and I'll give you an example now on this slide. And then you pay for attached licenses for all the other modules that you need for that particular user, and they're assigned to that user. So here's the example. I hope I can have this kind of laser pointer. I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying.
It's working. The laser pointer is working.
Laser pointer. So what you may notice is that if you buy a customer service professional-based license, you may not buy any attached licenses for it. They're not available. But itself, it may be assigned, attached as an attached license to 5 other base licenses. So if you want access for the same user to customer service and commerce, the only option you have is to buy a commerce base and customer service, either professional or enterprise attached license. So that's why this matrix exists. So not all of these base attached combinations are available. So it's not simple just base and attach. No, you must actually see if that is available. And in some cases, you must probably would even have to just buy 2 full licenses. But the majority cases of use cases, there's a base and attach combination. So yeah, I'm only explaining principles. So we're not getting into why you need these modules, what they do. We're not talking about that today. External users, if they are truly external, they don't work on your behalf, they don't work for you, they don't manage their business with your CRM, they're your end customers or off-site vendors that are not connected with your business directly. So they don't require external connectors or anything like that. They're just free. So they may access CRM from the outside, as long as they don't work for you on your behalf. That's it. And this is an example for CRM licenses. So sort of, we have sales module in CRM, we have customer service module in CRM, we have field service license in CRM, and the team member. Remember, I told you, team member is the cheapest. The one that you probably assign to everyone who needs at least some access to the CRM. It gets basic functionality to all the other modules. By the way, not always when somebody needs sales and customer service. Not always you need to buy base sales and customer service attached. If they only need basic functionality is included in the base license. It's a bit difficult to understand. Don't try to overthink it, because Dynamics is very complicated. As I said, probably requires an additional training. Remember about base and attach. Remember about team member access. That's the cheapest license that gives you access everywhere, and that team member access is included in every base license anyway. There are device licenses, device subscription licenses. Unlike other services, online services of Microsoft, device licenses are very prominent here. And why? Because you have retail stores. And when you have retail stores, retail locations, there'll be multiple people using the same device, or some operations locations, warehouses, call centers with multiple people accessing the same device. Device licenses are 50% more expensive than user licenses, so you need to do a calculation. But even if you have 2 users accessing the same device, you're already saving. If you want to get from a license to a higher level, there are step-ups available in the enterprise agreement subscriptions. You can enterprise agreements. Sorry, in the enterprise agreements, you have step-ups. You can step up from one subscription license to another. In CSP, there are no step-ups, but it doesn't mean that you may not switch. You just stop one subscription and start another. It's a very simple switch. So there are other Dynamics 365 services. So in regards to ERP, the logic is always exactly the same. So base and attach, team member access, low level. There's one thing that I'd like you to remember is that in the CRM, you can start with one license. In ERP, there are entry barriers. 10 or 20 licenses, I don't remember what. There's a document that tells you exactly what minimum. So there's a minimum order to start using ERP service. I think it's either 10 or 20 licenses. There are 3 other services that were brought under the Dynamics 365 brand. I don't know why, because they originate from different Microsoft offerings and different products. It's commerce, fraud protection, and marketing. They're all online packages, so they have absolutely very complicated. They're not easy. Very complicated licensing modules based on tiers, consumption, number of clicks, number of interactions, number of contacts, number of orders. So there are user licenses, there are consumption licenses. We're not going to be covering them today, and they're so rare. I don't believe they even deserve a dedicated training. If you really want to learn about them, for some reason you require that. There are pretty good trainings on Get Licensing Ready, which is free. Here's a question then. I think this.
Okay.
I think this one.
Yeah, this is the last question for the for today's.
It's not. We have 2. This one and the next
we have 2 more. Okay.
No,
okay.
we have this one and another one.
Yeah. Okay. So, what licenses do you need to provide basic access to your Dynamic 365 CRM for your customers? Team USL, none, or an external connector? Again, what licenses do you need to provide basic access to your Dynamic 365 CRM for your customers? Team USL, none, external connector. Take 1-2 minutes. Yes, we only in Azure. We're currently only speaking about Azure, Carl.
There's an interesting dialogue between Stephen and Carl going on.
So. No, Carl is he's filling in for you while you talk. He's
a techie. I'm a licensee. He's a techie. So
no, I love the conversation. It's really, I'm following it. It's really intriguing. So no, it's fantastic that this is going on in the background. Really valuable information.
Can I remove this dot somehow? I'm just wondering, whilst the community is trying to answer the question, I just don't see how can I do that. But anyway.
So for those of you that, I know that we are at the top of the 2nd hour, and you might have other engagement, so don't worry about it. This is being recorded. It's going to be on the YouTube channel. You can come back at a later stage and view it. So no worries. We've got another 5-10 minutes to wrap up. And if you do need to leave, then please just give us a like or a dislike. If you want to give us a comment, please do. Really important for us.
We get into an interesting part where we're going to very quickly cover cost management and compliance. So a few slides about Power BI. So okay, let's not waste time here. So nothing. External customers are external users. They don't require licenses. The answer here is B, and I'm surprised nobody just picked it up. But anyway, Power BI. So Power Platform was huge. Again, requires a dedicated training. Quickly about Power BI, because that's one of the flagship offerings of Microsoft, hero offerings. So Power BI is included in Office 365 E5 for Microsoft 365 E5. Otherwise, you need to pay for it per user, and not only for those who create reports, but only for those who consume them. So the applications themselves are free. Either Power BI Mobile or Power BI Desktop, they're free. But using the service of Power BI service, online service, requires licenses which are per user, monthly subscriptions, $9.99 per user, as far as I remember, something about $10. So even if you're consuming licenses, Power BI content, you have to pay for it, with the two exceptions. When you don't need to license a user to consume content is either when they get printouts on paper or when it's published on the web page as an HTML file. That's when that consumption doesn't require license. Any other way of consuming Power BI content, published content, requires a Power BI license. Simple as that. So if you want capacity, say you don't want to license per user, there's another option. You can actually think about virtual machines or managed databases. You can procure virtual cores of Power BI Premium service. Obviously, the more cores you procure, the more expensive it is. And then that is unlimited. That is for unlimited users. So some companies that we work with calculate that Power BI Premium is cheaper for them. Good for them. And now Microsoft introduced a new license which confused the hell out of us, everyone. So now
I just want to point out, this is not trivial. We're not going to get into details here. But on a project we did, a few weeks ago, and we did a financial analysis looking at growing the number of Power BI user licenses, premium, compared to moving on to the capacity or vCore based licenses. Once we passed a certain threshold for that specific company, the unlimited licenses was far, far more advantageous. So if you are growing and you do need additional licenses and it's not part of your E5 or whatever package that you have, definitely this is an option. Remember it and then do the calculations.
So please don't confuse it with the new license, which is called Power BI Premium per user, because that is just an upgrade on Pro. You just get more publishing options. It's very confusing. So there's Power BI Premium vCores, that is unlimited consumption. Power BI Premium per user, that is just a step up, basically, just a bigger license than Power BI Professional. Why wouldn't they call it Enterprise or something like that to avoid confusion? I have no idea. That's what they did. It's really not helping the customers. I'm fine. I'm going to be paid more to deal with this mess. So online services cost management. So please remember that even when you procure licenses, even if you haven't assigned the licenses, you're already paying for them. And assigning licenses is not automatic. You must assign them manually. Moreover, you must unassign them manually. So you must manage all with scripts, or with third-party tools. But online services themselves do not take licenses from a pool and drop them on your users. That's not how it works. So it's your task. There are free trials. I know about CSP. I haven't checked yet if there are free trials through EA. Through CSP, you have a 30-day trial on a product that you haven't yet started using, so you don't have in single commercial subscription. You want to try a product, say Power BI. Depending on availability in the CSP channel, you may be given 25 licenses, not more, not less, 25 exactly licenses to try a product for 30 days. If you like it, you must then switch to paid subscription manually. Otherwise, you're going to lose the data. So pay attention to that. It's a good thing to try something else. So obviously, that's a cost-saving tip as well. So when you plan your Office 365, when you manage your Office 365 subscriptions, especially Microsoft 365, please remind you, it's a bundle that can be separated in all the underlying small components, almost all of them, not all of them, but the majority of them, the most critical ones. You can separate them and you can pick and choose. So what we find and what people in our other trainings, people who attended our other trainings, they said in the comments, is that they also find in their practice, our colleagues and competitors, that debundling and picking and choosing various components for various users, user profiles, user personas, is more cost effective than buying bundles, even though Microsoft make bundle prices very attractive. Microsoft has recently raised, well, have they already? They set the prices on most Office 365 packages will go up. They're not touching E5 to keep E5 really, really attractive. That might change. So bundles are always better. Cheaper is not a true thing. It's a myth. It's a misconception. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are not. So look at all the options. Just look at everything. Don't just go with no, we're getting better value, it's easier to manage. If you're happy to pay more for an easier management, that is your choice. I've seen this. I've seen a company overpaying 50K per year for certain license bundles. For them, it wasn't such a big overpayment. 50K for some companies is nothing. It's like, I don't know, maybe 5 cents for you. I can't blame them. They said it saves them headache on management. So that's your choice. But then if you want to reduce costs, consider debundling. So what are your personas? How do you plan this? You need to look at what's your industry. It may be different in different industries. What are their roles? White collar, blue collar. Are they going to use all this functionality of Office? Are they going to use all these components? What sort of devices are they using? Are these devices shared or not? So all the caveats around Office 365 licensing. All the caveats around 365 licensing. What's their primary devices? As I said, what is the screen size? Are they using this in shifts? So all these things. And then do granular personas. You may think you only have 3 personas. I've seen cases when there were 16, 25 personas in a huge organization, requiring absolutely different product sets. And that's the company saved. A very good comment from Steven. If you only need Power BI Pro to E3, it's cheaper to buy E3 plus Power BI Pro instead of upgrading to E5, which includes Power BI Pro. That's a very good example, even with the current reshuffling of costs. So what do they need? So many financial planners, they only assess what managers think their personas need. What we do is we try to, when we are allowed to talk to the actual people on the ground, lower level management, to understand what is actually in use, and also if we can get access. And this is all we always require this. If we can get access to Office 365 consumption reports, which you can download for yourselves from the Office 365 management console, there are all the activity reports. It's a rabbit hole. Some of them are very, very detailed. If you know what you're looking at, if you know how to analyze them, look at the activities, look what is actually currently used, and they may not, in some cases, correlate to what the management thinks they should be using. It may work the other way around, so I'm getting a bit lost here, but so on the tangent, because sometimes you need to maybe force them to use it. That's another approach. But we always see some underutilized value, the value gap between what is paid for and what is actually used. So, and then you pick and choose. You just you can create your own spreadsheet. We have our own tools to help our customers to do it. Again, look at the contractual requirements, because sometimes it's not really clear. And we covered this in the previous second training session, when we talked about minimal orders for online services in an enterprise agreement. So just a very quick one. In the majority of cases, you may reduce your subscriptions, and the majority of cases, you are not right now in the current enterprise agreements. You're not required to license every single user with a single bundle, even with any bundle of Office 365, even under an enterprise agreement. So you may reprofile, you may resize, you may change, and use consumption reports in your Office 365 portal. Obviously, use it. If you are an advanced user, Graph API, which is now just had a major overhaul. People are crying, with all the tools that have been developed. Now they need to rewrite the tools to support new Graph API, which provides you lots of details around the licenses. Microsoft is bringing from October, I think, from March next year. Anyway, very soon, is bringing all the licenses, even volume licenses, into the Graph API, if you know what I'm talking about. So you have a programmatical interface to control and look at all your licenses in Microsoft. Hopefully that's going to work. It never works 100%, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And work with a financial analyst to plan your costs, to plan your financial strategy around Office 365, because what we see is there are always unassigned licenses. Get rid of them. You don't want unassigned licenses. Either unsubscribe or assign. Why do you have unassigned licenses? You're paying for them. It's dead weight. Leavers, people leave the company. Remember, licenses are not unassigned by Office 365. You have to do it yourself. Leavers, still holding on to licenses, reharvest. Then inactive usage, so either unassign or switch to a different package. So these are the ways to save. And on average, right now, the industry average number is 18% savings that can be achieved by just looking at this. 18% savings. Graph API doesn't need any license. It's available to use because when you have an Azure account, you have Graph API. So, and now we have the last question.
Okay, so let me take this, Alex. What tools, okay, this is already the financial planning side summary. What tools do you have today to manage costs in Azure and Office 365? So this is basically what we want. We're asking you a question.
It's
Do
not a test.
you know how
It's not a
your
test.
infrastructure, how your consumption is actually being used? You don't know. That's also legitimate. It's manually via Excel sheets. Do you use the Microsoft tools that come with Azure or any third party? And if you do use a third party, then if you want to share that with us, then please do. So this is, I would say, this is for the community. We basically want to share the information of the maturity of this subject. Even though Azure and Microsoft 365 has been around for a while now, it's only now really maturing into enterprise organizations. So everybody's in a different stage of maturity. So if you can share this with us, that's really fantastic. It's really good for the community, so everybody knows where they are in relation to other companies.
So whilst you are responding, because this is not a test, this is more. So you just tell us what you use. So I have two more slides. I remember Daniel in the very beginning said, cloud is one of the probably failed promises of the century. I had a stronger word there. I won't tell you which one, because cloud promised us everything is going to be simple. I remember very heated dialogues and conferences I used to take part in, 2009, 2010, where people were coming on stage and saying, we don't need your license and expertise. Tomorrow it's going to be all on the cloud, and nothing. We will stop caring about security and storage and backups and licensing and whatnot. It's going to be just a service. It didn't deliver. It's actually right now it's much more complicated. Compliance issues didn't disappear, and I'm not going to waste too much time. I just leave this slide on with all the 6 things. There are multiple ways. Here are a few recipes which I really recommend you to never try at home. How to become non-compliant with online services. Easy as pie. Very easy. Because it's not purely online services. Even if you look at how Microsoft describe online services are licenses. They tell you that. Online services are licensed. So therefore, we have not got away from non-compliance. It's all messed up, and it's going to take a few more years. I'm pretty sure I'll retire still as a licensed consultant.
Or maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. So we've been receiving some really interesting feedback regarding management. It's really a mix. This is not statistical because we don't have enough participants, but it's some participants are following up with Excel, others are not doing anything. Some are doing a combination of Excel sheets together with Microsoft Azure tools, and there are just an answer or two regarding third party. But again, it's not covering everything that they need. So I think just from these 5-6 answers, we understand that there's no golden standard these days. It's still completely open, and there's a lot to be done to consolidate that financial planning and the management piece of Azure and 365. So thanks for sharing, everybody.
So Carl, thank you for this question. It would be cool to learn the options, third-party tools. we'll see if somebody is going to fund an independent research that is not sponsored by the tools themselves. Happy to do it. Just need to find someone who's going to fund it. And well, you can look at Gartner, but careful with Gartner because Gartner works on the sponsorship model as well, and many of those marketing and research companies, they do that as well. I'm not saying their opinion is biased. Just take it with a pinch of salt. As anyone's, we will produce our own opinion about tools. Take it with a pinch of salt. Take everything we say with a pinch of salt. Always refer to Microsoft's official product terms.
Alex, do you want to summarize? And then if
yes.
there are some last minute questions that you want to just
if somebody still has questions, I think I've answered them all. So there's a question from Sandeep Kumar Singh. Will the remote desktop not happen if no audio scales used to the Zoom? I don't really understand the question, but I think I've covered it. So if you just rewind and rewatch that's I think I've covered it pretty well. So come in 2 weeks to this training again for the 4th session, desktop licensing or premises licensing, which will be also, we can't get away from it. We can't. Also, we'll mention some of the Office 365 connections between the old desktop licenses and current Office 365 subscriptions. Some of the material you've seen today will be repeated in from a bit of a different angle, from migrating from desktop to Office 365. And in a week time, as I told you, there's going to be just me, 8th of September, on the same channel, SPLA for providers. So thanks very much. If you have any commercial, any business inquiries, the email is, I think it's funny, asksamexpert.com. It will come to my inbox. So yeah, send your questions. Connect to us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube. As I asked you in the very beginning and once during the live, please click like or dislike, depending on how you like or dislike this, what we did today. And if you want to subscribe and become a part of the Sam Expert channel community, of course, you're welcome. Of course.
We invite you to be part of this community. If you like today's session, please share it with your peers. This is open to the community. And 2, just give us a like. Again, it's really important for us as part of our ability to build the community and get people into the channel. So that's our small ask from you today.
Daryl, what I noticed is that I already recognize about 40 names. So the community it already exists. There are people who come all the time. Olivia, Jitendra, Carl. Sorry if I don't call your name right now, but lots of names that we keep coming back. Manesh, yeah. So guys, hi. I already recognize you. You're also like my friends. So stay with us and safe with knowledge of licensing.
Thank you very much, everybody. Alex, fantastic session.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you as usual.